Good morning. Welcome to Second Parish. This morning, we're very happy to welcome back Reverend Janet Newton. And Janet is here from Martha's Vineyard. She started very early in the morning to get here on time. So welcome, Janet. There are a few announcements this morning. I think the most important, Pam and Chip are hosting a dinner for 8 at the end of February, and there's a sign-up sheet in Cushing Hall. So if you would like to attend, please sign up. It's supposed to be only 8, so first come, first serve. The leadership board will meet next week, and the book group is meeting March 1st, and they've chosen Silence by Julia Park Tracy as their next selection. Are there any other announcements? Okay, then our service will begin.
Let my thoughts Good morning. Our call to worship this morning comes from the Reverend Gretchen Haley, who informs us that though you have been warned and given plenty of explanations and reasons to do otherwise, you have persisted to claim a life of joy and justice and to carve out this time for renewal of your own heart, despite the din demanding your attention, luring you towards fear and cynicism. You persist with gratitude for this day, this life that has been given, this chance to begin again, despite all the forces of fragmentation, the disappointing ways we fail each other. We fail ourselves. We must refuse to let grief undo us or to let our dreams get lost along the way. In spite of all the evidence, we keep showing up at the edge of our own longing, and then we keep going, remembering this duty we have to life in a greater sense, this duty we have to each other, to our children and their children, this hope that is also a choice we make, this promise we fight for to persist in kindness, persevere in compassion, and prevail in a life that is bound entirely to love. Come, let us worship together. Let us find worth together. Our opening hymn this morning comes from number 18, What Wondrous Love in the Gray Hymnal. I'd like to invite Arthur and Noah to come forward and light our chalice this morning. As we speak in unison the Second Parish Covenant, with love for each other and with respect for each person's search for truth and meaning, we unite to be of service to our neighbors and the larger world. And if Reverend Liz would come forward.
All my children friends are mostly up here. Noah and Leander, could you help me do something real quick?
Yeah.
Take this and go down there. If you would like one, you can take one. We're going to talk about them, and I'm not going to say what it is yet. In the newsletter this week, I talked a lot about the many, many celebrations that are happening this week. Adults, can you help us out? What holidays and celebrations are happening this week? Pam, Valentine's Day was yesterday. Rose? President's Day is tomorrow. Ash Wednesday, from the pulpit, I heard. And the day before Ash Wednesday is Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, Shrove Tuesday. Okay, Ramadan starts on Wednesday, and there's one other one. It comes from our Asian countries. Lunar New Year. Nice. It is a big week of celebrations. Big, big week. And Leander and Noah helped me pass out a special fruit. Leander, you want to see if Rose and Jolene want one? Okay, so this special fruit is related to one of our holidays. And you can eat it. You don't have to eat it. Okay. Children, have any of you seen this special fruit before? You think so, Rose? What is it? A date? Why are you so smart? Nice job. So this is a date, and it is a superfood. It's got sugar in it. It's got fiber in it. Jolene, you have something? What is a date? Smart girl. Fiber, not fire, Leander. Fiber. Okay, and so this is a very special snack for our friends who celebrate Ramadan. Did you know that? Okay, so our friends who celebrate Ramadan fast from sun up to sundown. They don't eat and they don't drink that whole time. I know. It is horrible. I agree. It's hard to not eat. You can't even drink water. Can you imagine how thirsty you might be? You can't even have water. And so our friends who celebrate Ramadan wake up early before the sun comes up, which I am not a morning person, so that would be challenging. Rose gives a thumbs down. They wake up early to have a big breakfast. Pia, no thank you. Okay. And when the sun goes down, they break their fast by eating a date because it's got sugar and fiber and it gives them energy that they've been missing through the whole day. Okay? Do you know, children friends first, do you know how long Ramadan lasts? Leander, you can guess, but I think Rose might know. Do you want to guess? 2 years. Oh my goodness, not 2 years. Rose. 2 days? Nope, longer than that. Go ahead. Longer than 2 weeks. Go ahead. Longer than 3 weeks. Yeah. Just about, yeah, it lasts for a month. 5 weeks. Depending on how long the month is, it could be about 5 weeks. Okay? And at the end, they have a big celebration. They give gifts. They have a big meal, and it's called Eid. And so we'll talk about Eid in a month when it happens. But I want you to think about how hard it might be to fast all day. And we're going to remember our Muslim friends starting on Wednesday and the religious moments that they have in that month while they're fasting. Do you think you can remember that? Okay. And upstairs, we're going to talk more about what Ramadan means. We are going to go upstairs right now. Is everybody ready? Yeah. All right. Kiddos, let's head upstairs.
accidentally picked a reading by Muhammad Iqbal, forgetting that it was Ramadan this week until just now. I lived in Morocco for 2 years, and so I was around Ramadan quite a bit, and those dates brought that right back. If you would join with me in this responsive reading that you'll find in the back of the hymnal, number 610, The Journey of Love. In this reading, Muhammad Iqbal distinguishes sort of this idea of a passionate and active love from an intellectual or reason-filled love. For him, love is the guiding force that drives us to rise above all of our limitations. Where in our hearts is that burning of desire?
It is true that we are made of dust, and the world is also made of dust. But the dust has motes rising.
Whence comes that drive in us?
We look to the starry sky, and love storms in our hearts.
Whence comes that storm?
The journey of love is a very long journey.
But sometimes, with a sigh, you can cross that vast desert.
Search and search again without losing hope.
You may find someone a treasure on your way.
My heart and my eyes are all devoted to the vision.
Here ends our reading. As the solo is happening this morning, you are invited to write a joy or a concern on cards, and they'll be brought forward for us to hold those joys and concerns collectively, to bear their weight together and to share their loftiness together. I applaud the silver lining in this joy, a joy that this winter has been such a wonderful cross-country ski season on the South Shore, which I am sure is true for you all. It's been a little hard on the vineyard, I gotta be honest. With gratitude for the ways in which we can embrace all of the seasons of life, let us sing Spirit of Life, hymn number 123. Have a moment of meditation, which we will end with prayer. So much undone, so much to do, so much to heal in us and the world, so much to acquire. A meal, a healthy body, skiing across the South Shore. A fit one, a lover, a job, a better job, proof we have and are enough just around the corner now. And up against it, the reality of all that falls short and the limits of today. We honor the limits. If your body won't do what it used to for right now, let it be enough. If your mind won't stop racing or can't think of the word, let it be enough. If you are here utterly alone and in despair, be all that here with us. If today you cannot sing because your throat hurts or you don't have the heart for music, be silent. The world won't stop spinning on her axis if you don't rise to all occasions today. Love won't cease to flow in your direction. Your heart won't stop beating. All hope won't be lost. You are part of the plan for this world's salvation. Of that I have no doubt. The world needs its oceans of people striving to be good, to carry us to the shores of hope and wash fear from the beachheads and cleanse all wounds so they can heal. Rest if you must, like a swimmer lying on her back who floats, or a hawk carried on cushions of air. Rest in pews made to hold weary lives, in space carved out for the doing of nothing much but being. Perhaps then you will feel in your bones, in your weary heart, the aching, healing sense that this is enough, even this, that we are enough, you are enough, enough. For these and all the meditations of our hearts unspoken in this hour, may we say, Amen. Please join with me in a collective prayer. Holy One, beyond all names, eternal wellspring, May love rise again in us today with food for every table, shelter for every family, and reverence for every life. Forgive us our failings in love and free us from all falseness, that the light of our souls may shine and the strength of our spirits endure for earth and all its people, this day, tonight, and forever. Amen. We take an offering now to sustain the work of this church. May what you give bring you joy. May it magnify all that is in your heart as it carries out into the world. Our reading this morning comes from Ross Gay, the poet and essayist. It's entitled Tomato on Board. What you don't know until you carry a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane is that carrying a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane will make people smile at you, almost like you're carrying a baby. I did not know this until today, carrying my little tomato about 3 or 4 inches high in its 4-inch plastic starter pot, which my friend Michael gave to me, smirking about how I was going to get it home. Something about this at first felt naughty. Not comparing a tomato to a baby, but carrying the tomato onto the plane. And so I slid the thing into my bag while going through security, which made them pull the bag for inspection. When the security guy saw it was a tomato, he smiled and said, I don't know how to check that. Have a good day. But I quickly realized one of its stems, which I almost wrote as arms, was broken from the jostling, and it only had 4 of them. So I decided I'd better just carry it out in the open. And the shower of love began. Before boarding the final leg of my flight, one of the workers said, "Nice tomato," which I don't think was a come-on. And the flight attendant asked about the tomato at least 5 times, not an exaggeration, every time calling it my tomato. Where's my tomato? How's my tomato? You didn't lose my tomato, did you? She even directed me to an open seat in the exit row. Why don't you guys go sit there and stretch out? I gathered my things and set the little guy in the window seat so she could look out. When I got my water, I poured some into the little guy's soil. When we got bumpy, I put my hand on the little guy's container, careful not to snap another arm off. And when we landed, and the pilot put the brakes on hard, my arm reflexively went out across the seat, holding the little guy in place the way my dad's arm would when he had to brake in that car without belts to speak of, and one of my very favorite gestures in the Encyclopedia of Human Gestures. Here ends our reading. So I need to start by confessing something. This sermon has been trying to be everywhere at once, which frankly feels appropriate given the number of holidays that we lifted up at the start of the service today. Love also does that. It spills, it wanders, it refuses containment, even if it's only being held in a 4-inch pot. I had grand plans for today. I was going to speak on love and justice and power, ostentatious love, lofty ambitions, ostentatious ambitions. I have since repented, sort of. What emerged instead was something smaller, the incongruity of a tomato plant on a plane, inviting connection with all who take notice. A volunteer sprout in the garden, one I did not intentionally plant, one that insisted, start here. So here is the question that I want us to carry this morning. How many ways can we say, I love you? In words, in silence, in restraint, in listening, in courage, in action. And before we go further, a content warning or an occupational hazard. Beyond this point, there be metaphor. There was some behind us as well, but let's hope that this all bears fruit. It is magic to turn our lives into blessing. Not magic in the glitter and smoke sense, magic in the sense of transformation, of taking the raw materials of existence, of fear, anger, grief, longing, hope, and turning them into something that nourishes life. Love is the alchemy that turns inward awareness into outward blessing. But before we ask what can love do, we must ask, where does love come from? How do we grow it? How do we recognize it? Because love is not just sentiment, it is discipline. It is silence and listening and practice. It is securing your oxygen mask and the oxygen mask of your tomato plant after. It is, as one of my seminary professors said, serving from the saucer rather than the cup. Let love overflow the cup into the saucer and serve from that space instead of depleting yourself, your cup. If you're not caring for yourself, you cannot care for anyone else. It is, as the philosophers say, necessary, but not sufficient. If love is going to carry anything heavy, like anger or injustice or grief or world turning, then it has to be more than a feeling. It has to be a trained capacity. And if we do not work to cultivate the capacity for world-changing love, we have no chance of wielding it when the world asks something hard of us. And sometimes that training begins when the world we thought we understood gets flipped. When I was in 7th grade, I had an earth science teacher named Mr. Max, and we began a unit on rock layers, the strata that make up the Earth's crust, and he told us a story about his graduate field work. He and his classmates had been sent by the professor out to a dead-end wall of a box canyon out in the west, a wall that held a length of time that we, in our brains, struggle to calculate, accustomed as we are to human lifespans. Igneous rock from volcanic interruptions and metamorphic layers pressured by unimaginable heat and sedimentary bands laid down by ancient inland seas and schist and gneiss and quartzite and limestone and granite and shale. Geology has the best words. The students divided the canyon wall into sections and they carefully mapped each layer and they constructed timelines. And they inferred earthquakes and glaciations, and they traced wind-blown sand piled upon sand upon sand upon sand. And confident in their work, they rolled up their map and they drove it back to their professors, presenting it like a holy scroll. And he unrolled it, looked at it once, crumpled it up, and threw it away. Nope, he said, not right, try again. So out they went. Again, they mapped. Again, they returned. Again, crumple. Nope. 3 times, 6 times, 10 times. By this point, they were sick of each other's company. They were sick of the high desert heat. They were sick of the grit in their sandwiches and their teeth. They were angry at the canyon wall and angry at themselves and angry at the blasted decision to pursue a life studying hunks of rock. And finally, one of them had an aha moment. Wait, she said, what if we've assumed the wrong thing? What if the oldest rock isn't always on the bottom? What if a cataclysmic event flipped the entire formation? What if we thought was bedrock, capital T truth isn't bedrock at all? They remapped the canyon wall with that possibility in mind. They returned. The professor unrolled their holy scroll, and he smiled and nodded. And this time, the world as they knew it settled again. Sometimes, in the middle of everything we thought we understood, something forces us to throw away the map. And the spiritual question is not, how do we defend our first draft? The spiritual question is, are we willing to look again? Sometimes looking again doesn't feel noble. Sometimes it feels humiliating. Because when the map fails, especially if it fails repeatedly, we do not generally default to eager curiosity. Not on the 10th time. We feel anger. We feel despair. The writer Terry Tempest Williams one time was sitting in a room full of people, and she asked each person in a row, going around in a circle, the same question: how do we transform our anger? I will speak for myself, although I suspect that I'm not alone, as someone who draws deep, soul-altering inspiration from the natural world. I sometimes feel as though I am walking a knife edge between anger and despair. If I lean too far one way, I'm in paralyzing grief, and if I lean too far the other, I'm in impotent rage. And the horizon that I once counted on for stability begins to tilt. What was on top starts to feel like it's on the bottom. Birds appearing north of where they once lived, pollinators coming out of sync with the flowering trees, winters that are weirding and struggling to interrupt disease cycles, political shifts that upend the bedrock truths upon which we'd built our understandings of interdependence and connection and hope. When what we trusted begins to shift, what then? Anger is energy, but without love, anger hardens into cruelty. Without love, despair sinks into paralysis. Love is what allows anger to become transformation instead of destruction. And the natural world offers us a model for how transformation works. Sometimes something comes along that flips the canyon wall, and the hardest spiritual task is not defending our map, it is looking again. What else can we see here? Mr. Max has his ears ringing because in that same 7th grade class, he also taught us about rivers. And when a river first begins to run, it runs fast and straight. It yields to gravity. It resists nothing. It carries large debris in suspension. It gives itself no floodplain. Young rivers party hard. But over time, a river matures, and it slows, and it widens, and it begins to respond to obstacles rather than barreling through them. And it shifts from a sharp V shape to a gentler U, and it starts to meander. And then, and this is key, over much time, it realizes that some of its curves are too costly. It expends too much energy traveling far out to the bend. So instead of following the entire arc, it cuts across its own bank. And what remains is an oxbow lake, crescent shape, cut off from the river's main flow. And for a time, the oxbow sustains life. Eventually, it will dry. The landscape remembers that it once held a river, but it doesn't need to remain that way. The natural world is designed to transform, and so it does in many beautiful and profound ways. Mushrooms reclaim poisoned soil. Trees turn carbon dioxide into oxygen. Dust travels from Africa to fertilize the Amazon. Change is a given. It is we humans who cling. What if the river were too devoted to its historical identity as a river? What if it insisted on following the old channel even when it no longer led to life? We are surrounded by oxbows, old stories, old systems, old devotions, white supremacy culture, consumer capitalism, devotion to explanation that leaves no room for awe, an insistence that truth is what gets yelled loudest, not what can be observed with our own eyes and experienced in our own bodies, or that reality is up for debate. The landscape remembers. It doesn't have to stay that way. And here is where metaphor matters. Barry Lopez called metaphor wisdom's oldest tool. To abandon metaphor, he suggested, is to pave the way to rigidity, to insist upon a straight river instead of the oxbows and evolution. Literalism leaves no room to turn. Exactly. Metaphor allows us to think on several planes at once, to see a canyon wall and our own intellectual humility, to see a river and our own spiritual evolution, to see a tomato and our own unique capacities to care. Metaphor is not decoration. It is always an invitation to look again. And when we look again, sometimes what we see is not abstract at all, even if the word that we use is one we struggle to pin down. Sometimes we see love. These are not decorations. They are invitations to look again. And when we practice looking again, something strange happens. I joked with my colleagues recently that the title of my memoir ought to be Stumbling Backwards into the Divine. It describes the peculiar pattern of my own spiritual life. Almost every encounter that I've ever had with the sacred felt like an accident. Either because when I was faced with the invitation to engage with the holy, I did everything I could to avoid it, or I entered the moment with deliberate cynicism or defeatism, or I went somewhere expecting the secular and I tripped over the sacred. That's my track record. I do not float gracefully towards transcendence. I trip over it and I back into it and I argue with it and I resist it. And then I find that it has been waiting for me anyway, which is perhaps another way of describing love. Because love is not always a spotlight. Sometimes it is what we encounter when we stop defending the map. Sometimes it is what we find when the river cuts a new channel. Sometimes it's what we discover when we simply start paying better attention. And somehow it knows how to wait patiently for us finally to wake up to it. Several years ago, I read about a former forest ranger in hospice care who was no longer able to walk on his own. He had spent his entire life in the woods, and near the end of his life, he confessed a longing to be in the forest one more time. And the hospice workers listened, and they knew that they could not accomplish this on their own, so they called up the local firefighters, and the firefighters agreed. Other volunteers covered their shifts. They wheeled him over trails through the forest for 3 hours. They stopped so he could listen to a stream. They held bark from cedar trees near his face so he could breathe in the scent of the forest. One firefighter later described the experience as the highlight of his career. If you only notice the final moment, a man in the woods, you miss the miracle. Each act of love and care produces a ripple, one ripple, and then another, and then another. And if we train ourselves only to notice the final ripple, we're going to miss the miracle. The question becomes, are we practicing the noticing so that we can see the miracles each step of the way, the river as it evolves, and the oxbows as well? Because if we're to transform anger or confusion, doubt, if we're to release the oxbows, love must be more than tender feeling. The miracle is in the ripples. It is in the longing, in the vulnerability to ask, the listening, the coordination, the volunteers covering shifts. Love is often quiet, networked, hidden. The question is not, does love exist? The question is, are we letting ourselves see it in all of the lenses that we have been offered to see it through? Every spiritual tradition that is celebrating in this week, throughout time, throughout geological eras, it must be, love must be multidimensional. Some of our most beloved thinkers, like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Cornel West, have given us lenses through which to see these dimensions. They've said things like, love without power is sentiment, and power without love is domination. Or justice is what love looks like when it gets organized, love when it gets into public. Love emerges when we see fragile things defying the odds at 10,000 feet. But even then, love seeks containment and structure and discipline. If we want to transform anger or confusion or chaos, to release archaic oxbows, to remake maps with joy and curiosity, then we must cultivate it as a daily practice. We must ask, how many ways can I say, I love you, ostentatiously? Not just in romance, but in stewardship, in courage and accountability, listening, in letting go of what no longer serves life. How many ways can we say, I love you? With tea brewed strong, with tissue offered softly, a squeeze on the shoulder, shoulders widened, cedar bark lifted to the nose. With noticing and noticing again and again and again, going back as many times as we need to locate the truth within dead ends, within broken-limbed tomato walls, tomatoes that bring out everyone's inner nurturer, May you never run out of ways to find and show and say and take in that love. May you notice, may you practice, may you act. May we remember we belong to one another with every ripple out and as it comes back in. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is Just as Long as I Have Breath, number 6. Please rise in body or spirit. The words of A. Powell Davies as we wander out into the cold and strap on our skis. When two individuals meet, so do two private worlds. None of our private worlds is big enough for us to live in, at least live a wholesome life in. We need the wider world of joy and wonder, of purpose and venture, of toil and tears. What are we, any of us, but strangers and sojourners, forlornly wandering through the nighttime until we draw together and find the meaning of our lives in each other, dissolving our fears in each other's courage, making music together, and lighting torches to guide us through the dark. We belong together. Love is what we need to love and be loved. And these words from a letter that Emily Dickinson wrote: the world is just a little place, just the red in the sky before the sun rises. So let us keep fast hold of hands, that when the birds begin, none of us be missing. Amen, my friends.